Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome in, everyone, to episode 70 of Instigate Success, Building an ABA Franchise. I am your host, as always, Jake Schoen, aka Jakey Muffins, here with you Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. Apologize for running a few minutes late here. Kind of held up at work for a bit, so I'm running a little late. But I think I've got everything pretty much put together or being put together on the fly. And it looks like the back end stuff updated a little, which I think maybe this is on how it looks. I don't know. But I think the name thing changed. I think that is different. But we'll go through it tonight. And we got a lot of stuff to talk about. A big game coming up tomorrow. It's out at the top of everybody's mind right now. I think, everybody involved with the Instigators. We all know we had this one circled on our calendar. We'll talk about it more later in the episode. But tomorrow is the big game. It is the ultimate litmus test. We will be facing off against the defending ABA champions, undefeated currently, and the number one team according to power rankings, the Chicago Fury, at our home venue, Best Choice Fieldhouse in Fishers, Indiana, tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. tip. Big game. I think everybody's real excited for that. And we've always been able to step up to those big games, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But start off with that because that's always the big game we had circled going into this year. Obviously, there's a lot of other big games coming throughout the season, but I think that's the one. We've all been counting down to the days until that game, which is going to be tomorrow night. But let's jump into this week's episode. We'll recap our season so far, break down last week's game. We just recorded the stream for that. If you didn't catch it live or through Patreon, we do that recording for the YouTube throughout the week after the games, and we just recorded that last night. It should be out here shortly over the next couple of days. And that was a game against the Legends, a team that we faced off several times so far this year. But as always, I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who is tuning in tonight, all of our loyal supporters, and especially all of our loyal Patreon members. Again, we're over 125 Patreon members, and we really appreciate all the support we've got there. Everybody who's watching this on YouTube as well, if you're catching it a couple of days after, thank you for tuning in as well. And be sure you subscribe so you can get notified when these new podcasts come out, as well as the game highlight tapes and the game broadcasts as well. Once we do put those over on YouTube, if you want to see all this stuff live, though, join these people here over on the Patreon. You'll get access to all of our live streams, including the game streams, for anybody that's at $1 or higher tier. There are higher tiers. Some of those include votes. So if you're a fan voter, that's a $10 tier. You get to vote on important decisions like roster decisions every week. We were a little late for the roster this week. We'll break that down too when we get a little closer as far as the fans man vote. But that is a cool benefit that our fan voters get every single week. And then throughout the season, we'll have evaluations, and we'll have that in the off season as well. But we also did votes for things like the name, the logo, jerseys, all that type of fun stuff. So that is how we created the Instigators, is with all our support from the fans. So thank you as always for joining us tonight and every Friday night here. So let's jump into. I think I've just got all the past games here. Yeah, so I've got all the past games here. Then we'll take a look at around the division here, see where we stand here in the division. Remember, we're in a new division this year. We play some of the familiar teams though that we played last season. We were in the Central region. We're still in the Central region. We went from the red division, now we're in the black division. So just a little bit of an alignment shift when it comes to the divisions. As far as the regions, though, we're still in the same region, which is why we play some of the same teams as last season. But we started off the season again. We're in the new home venue, new hometown. If you haven't been following us this season and are just tuning in, but we're in Fishers, Indiana, at Best Choice Fieldhouse, our new home venue. We're playing Saturday nights at 7:30. I think all of our home games are going to be are Saturday nights at 7:30. So we tipped off the season in October against the Louisville Pros, a very competitive team that we faced off a few times last season. And we were able to get our first home opener and first season opener victory with a 124-106 victory there. It also marks the first time in Instigators history that we started off the season with a win. So it's the first time in history we also had a winning record with a 1-0 record at that point. And that game was presented by our wonderful sponsor, the Stites family. So, that was a fun game. And it really introduced the crowd, to the Instigators basketball for everyone there in Fishers, Indiana. Then we went into the next game, which was on the road. We faced off against the Legends. Again, that's the team we played this past weekend. So we've already faced off against the Legends a couple of times. But this first matchup was on the road with a 145-117 victory. And so far, maybe a little bit of a spoiler here, but so far the Instigators have been able to pull off victories in all of their matchups against the Indiana Legends so far. So that's always a fun, and it is a competitive matchup as well. Every time we face them, the Legends are a team that can get really hot from beyond the arc. They're one of those teams you can't let off the gas pedal to, because they definitely can get hot and shoot themselves back into a game. But it's always fun to have these, friendly in-state rivalry games between teams like the Indiana Legends. It's Hoosier State versus Indiana. I think there's a big football game possibly going on right now with two Indiana-based teams as well. In case anybody's watching that and they're catching this, afterwards. But it's always fun, when you have the games where close proximity, and you want to have the rights to say that you represent the area. So far it has been the Hoosier State. Then we jump into the following week. So after that 2-0 start, the Instigators found themselves for the highest ranking they've ever had in the power rankings. We were up to number 16 with that 2-0 start. Then we had our third game here against the Columbus Wizards back at home. And this was a 3-game home stretch, first game of that 3-game home stretch. Wizards out on top, though, 126-114. This was a game, if you watched it, the Wizards actually trailed for a good bit of the game and came back at the end and put a strong effort in at the second half, and really pulled themselves away at the end of the game with that 126-114 victory over your Instigators. But then we had our next week again. That 3-game home stretch was against the Ohio Kings, a team that we faced off multiple times in the past. Wizards, that was our first time ever matching up against the Wizards, a competitive team that we knew was going to be a difficult task. But the Kings, we faced several times in the past, and we know that they are a high-scoring team. And they showed that again in this matchup with a 131-111 victory. After that, 4 games there, we found ourselves at 500 with a 2-2 record. Kind of a big, marker you can put right there in the season. We started off 2-0, had the 2 losses, and then we're at the 500 mark. It puts you back at the 0-0 mentality. You got to get the win so you're back on the winning side. If you get that loss, then you're back on a losing record. So the next matchup there, that third game of the home stretch, wound up being against the Priora Pitbulls, and we have that game at home against the Pitbulls, and then we had a game on the road against the Pitbulls directly after that. But that was a significant victory for your Hoosier State Instigators with a 141-108 victory there. One of the largest margins of victory we've had, and really showed we can pull it together here in that third home game of that stretch, and get everything back on the path where it should be. So we're back at the a winning overall record, 3-2 at that point, and then we're going on the. I think we had a break that week because of the holidays, with Thanksgiving. And then the following week, we went back on the road, and we played against the same exact team, the Pitbulls. And I don't have the graphic for that. So we'll have to jump over to the my stats at some point. But I do realize I forgot to put a graphic up for that one. But the game went the other way for the Instigators. It was 124 to 139. Pitbulls with a victory at their home venue. So split that series there. Again, back at the 500 mark. That led to this past game, which, if you see that score, it's really interesting. I think that's the best way to put it. 89 to 82. Definitely different than any of the other games we've had against the Legends. Normally, both of our teams are pretty high scoring teams, and this marks the first time it's a historic game here, first time in Instigators history that we have held an opponent under 100 points. So that's very impressive. Obviously, that was something we as owners, all of us, have talked about doing at some point, was to mark down a victory and hold the opponent under 100 points. So that's a huge props to the team for that amazing defensive effort in that game. On the flip side of that, though, we didn't expect it to be under 100 points for us as well. So I think that's the first or possibly second time. I think that overtime game last season I think we scored 98. So I think this is our second time in history that we have scored under 100 points, but it is the lowest total score for the Instigators, and so it is with a victory though. So that is the double-edged sword there. You got your 100 points, under 100 points allowed, but you also scored less than 100, but it's a victory, so it gets us back on that winning track. Obviously shots just weren't really falling, and I think especially in that second half, the free throws weren't, like, even free throws weren't falling. The shots weren't falling, free throws weren't falling. However, I will say, and we'll pull up we might as well just do that right now here that we've got this. We'll share the screen and go to that box score for this past game here. But we did have a couple of key moments in the game that I would like to point out. You'll be able to see that in the game broadcast, when we put that up, as well as if you caught it live, you could have seen it there. But give me one sec. And we'll share the screen here. All right, so you can see there the box score 82-89. But if you look at that, that's also like really different than a lot of the games that we've seen. 19 points, that was, I believe, the lowest total we've had or one of the lowest totals we've had in a quarter. 32, we kind of got back on track where we normally are, but 16 in that third quarter, I'm pretty sure that's our lowest all time. And then 22 in the fourth. But I'm going to point out here a couple of key guys that kind of strung together some opportunities that kind of changed the game for the Instigators. In that fourth quarter, especially, our guy who led scoring this past week, Malcolm Martin, with 15 points, he hit a couple of crucial threes there in that fourth quarter. You see there, he went 3 of 6 from threes overall. But that was a kind of a momentum changer when he hit those shots. I believe he also had a couple of 2 pointers, a couple layups as well that helped kind of help that transition in the fourth where it was getting close, and you saw the legends cutting that lead. It's real close towards the end. So that was the leading scorer, Malcolm Martin. In the first half, guy I'd like to call out was Steven Rogers, Captain America. He really, this was his first game I think we've seen in the ABA season where it seemed like he was he had the green light, so to say, to shoot, and he was willing and taking those shots when he had the opportunities there. And it was really really good to see that. He had a couple of 3 pointers, and he also dished the ball out. There's only one assist on there, but he had one a nice assist at the towards the end of the game, I do believe. But he had couple of threes there, and one of them was actually a 4-point play because it was off of a 3D rule. So that was, real nice to see from Steve. Some of those young guys on the core, new players as well, and kind of making those big moments in the game. Another guy who the game was a little up and down with the turnovers, but Caleb Magruder also had a couple of big like difficult layups that he wound up hitting. And as you see, the scoring overall was well spread out, just not a ton in general. But you see the free throws there too in general, 55% on the night, 16 of 29. As I mentioned, not too great from the line. And one other guy I will mention, you'll see the name that may not be familiar there is Krishan Hopkins. So he also didn't have a number there. We're out a few players this past game, which is the reasoning behind why we did not have the fans ban. Traditionally we have that vote, but we actually didn't have enough players to do that vote for this week's game. And that is the reasoning behind that. So one of the guys, one of our point guards that we've seen throughout the season, Dame Wilburn, he was out this past week, believe, for a wedding. And if you watch the game stream, you'll see his number jersey, his number 2 jersey. That's actually Krishan Hopkins wearing that. But he had 2 free throws at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, things got kind of close, and it was a 3-point game with, I believe, less than 10 seconds left. We got the ball inbounded, and he was in possession of the ball when they fouled, and he hit 2 crucial free throws there. His only 2 free throws of the night, but he knocked down both of those to bring it to a 5-point game when there was really only time for the Legends to have 1 possession left. With the ABA rules, there is a possibility for a 5-point play, but compared to an opportunity for a 3-point difference and a 5-point difference, that is a huge difference at the end of the game when it's a 1 possession. The 3-pointer, obviously you could hit the 3-pointer and it ties it. You can get the layup or a 2-point shot and a foul and an opportunity for 3. You can also do the 3D rule, where if there's a turnover, you have the opportunity for the extra point in addition to any of those. But then there's also the 4-point shot in the ABA, where if it's a shot behind half court and it goes in, that's a 4-point shot. So if you're only up by 3, there is an actual legitimate chance the other team could hit a shot and you would lose the game because they hit a 4-pointer. The 5-point difference, though, that made it where the only way they could have had that 5 point difference made up in one possession is if they were fouled on a 4 point shot and made it, which is extremely unlikely. So that was a huge difference at the end of the game as well. Um, but that was, his debut for the Instigators. I would say it was a pretty nice debut there. He led the team in assists, 10 assists, so pretty nice effort there. And second on the team in steals with 4. LB, another one of our young guys, leading the way with 5 steals, and he also had 12 points. Tied with Levante Nelson for the second most points in the game. And I got to shout out Taya as well. 6 offensive rebounds. Very, very good effort on the boards from him. And he was able to get a lot of second chance opportunities for the Instigators with those offensive rebounds throughout the game. But great defensive game overall from everybody. You see they're well spread out for rebounds across the board from the team and steals. But that was, this past game. So let's stop sharing just for a second here. Then we'll jump back and go on, and look more about the division here for the season so far. But we've got this game coming up tomorrow night. Really big game, like I said. So we'll take a quick promo here that I threw together for tomorrow's game. So let's see. I'll jump off the screen for a second and we'll run that, and then we'll jump into tomorrow's game matchup. So big game tomorrow. Had to make that little promo there so we could, have things going on. But we got this big matchup. Like I said, we've got that circled on our calendar for a while. Tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. against the Chicago Fury, the defending champions of the ABA. But it's always cool, that we're in our second season now, and we're able to say that in our first season we played the defending champions. This is going to be our second season. This is our second season, and we're able to say the same exact thing. We are playing the defending champions, and the cool thing is they are in our division. Last year we had the Lions in our division. Now we've got the Fury in our division. So this is also a big divisional game. And like I said, we're gonna jump over to the stats and see where the teams fall throughout the season. But this is an opportunity for a big tiebreaker in the standings for the division. Fury undefeated still at this point on the season. Yeah, they're the number 1 overall ranked team. Our second team in the division, as far as rankings go, is the Southland Saints, a team that we were able to beat a couple of times last season when we matched up. I don't believe we have any matchups against them this season on the books so far, though. And then we are the third team in the division currently. So all 3 of us have winning records at this point. And then we've got, I believe there's 8 teams total in each of the divisions. So right now, though, we are number 3. The top 4 lock themselves in, and we saw last season how important that was because if you don't lock yourself in, you are part of those play-in games. And the play-in games, you got to win a couple of games before you can even make it to the actual playoffs. Then once you're in the playoffs, you've already had a little bit more wear and tear than some of those other teams. But we were able to advance for that first round of the play-ins, and then into that second. Didn't go our way, But if we're able to stay where we are in the third spot right there, we would be able to lock ourselves into the playoffs and at least have the matchup going into that for potential for more Instigators basketball here. But the Fury are the ones that lead the way currently in the division, and they kind of, control their own destiny, to so to say. Being undefeated at this point, realistically, that is exactly what they do. They control their own destiny. If they continue to win it, they're going to be the team that's at the top. They are the number one seed. And then it comes down to the two and the three seeds between us and the Saints. And then, obviously there's other teams in the division that could jump up as well. But right now it is those us three teams that kind of are at the top of that division. And we saw, let's see, the fans man vote got put up a little late this week. Again, we were trying to get some things squared away as far as roster goes. Last week we were a little short on players, and this week we ran into some of those same things, but we did still have that fans man vote. It was between three guys that we've seen on that vote a few times. Each of them have won the vote at least once, and it was between Lance Hopkins, Caleb Magruder, and Anthony Williams. Between those three guys, we'll have to see how that winds up ending. But I think we wound up putting that vote out earlier today. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. This is a big matchup, so it will be a very important vote. But I will also say, if you see our roster for this week, it is a little bit different as far as what we've got out officially so far. We will have, obviously returning our guys from last season. We've got JoJo Hart and Chuck Bloom, and I'm looking. I think not sure if Joe Bird's going to be available. He did sustain an injury, and not from the game, but I believe a work injury last weekend. So if you catch the game stream, you'll notice he's got some stitches and some bandages on his arm. So that may be the reasoning behind that. Uh, as far as other guys that we've seen throughout the season, we've also got Malcolm Martin, Levante Nelson, Damian Wilburn, who will be back, LB, Lawrence Boyd, Steve Rogers, and Rico Spikes. And then a couple of guys that are kind of new here. We saw last week Krishan, he'll be back. Krishan Hopkins will be back on with the Instigators this week. And then a couple of new guys here. We got Cash Bell, who's going to be. I think he's going to be giving Rico Spikes some kind of competition there for top name in skaters between Cash Bell and Rico Spikes. And then Tyler Bibbs, he'll also make his debut for the Instigators. So something to keep your eye on, in tomorrow's matchup. There are a couple of new guys on the team that you may see on the court for your Hoosier State Instigators. But we will have that big matchup against the Chicago Fury. A lot on the line. Obviously bragging rights to say that you are the first team since they went on that hot streak last season as well, but the first team to end the streak for the Fury. That's on the table, and then obviously division as well. And that's going to be really key and beneficial when it comes down to the line in the playoff standings in the Central Black Division. But let's jump back over there and take a look at the scores from around the division this season so far and see how it has matched up. Let's share that screen again. And we see things started off this season a little earlier over in October. We have the Saints with a victory over the Monsters to start off the season. Again, the Saints are the number 2 team currently in the division. Chicago Knights over Wisconsin Frost, and a 1-point victory there on that matchup over the Showtime on top of the Inferno. Chicago Fury, again, they are undefeated, the number 1 team. The team we're playing tomorrow, with a very heavily decided victory there, 161-73 over the Monsters. A reminder, the Monsters are a new team for this season in the ABA. We will match up against them in a little bit later. I think next month we do match up against the Monsters, if not before then. Then that second weekend of games, that was when we made our first game there with that victory over the Pros. Saints with another victory. They also started off hot this season over the Showtime. Windy City Inferno with a victory over Chicago Rebels. Indiana Lions, they are not in our division, but they did play a team in our division with a very heavily lopsided game there, 173-196, with the Lions defeating the Wisconsin Frost. Lions, again, still not in our division, but playing in a division opponent the next day as well, with a 132-85 victory over the Monsters. Southland continued their hot streak, though, with another victory, this one over the Inferno the following day. Then we jumped into the fourth weekend of games. We had the Lacrosse Showtime on top of the Wisconsin Frost. A close game here for the Fury, a 111-105 victory over the St. Louis Spirits. And then we had, again, one of those weird score games that you see for that one there, an 84-33 victory for the Chicago Rebels over the Midwest Monsters. Then we had the Fury with another victory, another close game there, 105-98 over the River City Gamblers. Then we had the Windy City Inferno on top of the Frost. And then our first matchup there against the Legends with Instigators up on top on that one. Following week, Wisconsin Frost with a victory over the Chicago Rebels. Chicago Fury again with a very close game there, 118-115 victory over the Windy City Inferno. And then we had that matchup against the Wizards, where the Wizards wound up victorious. Then the Lions, again playing a team in our division, won that game against the Southland Saints, handing the Saints their first loss on the season, I do believe. Then we had our matchup against the Kings the following week, with the Kings on top. Chicago Fury with a 30-point victory over the Lacrosse Showtime, and an overtime game that weekend for the Saints against the Wisconsin Frost, pulling off a 6-point victory there, with the Saints pulling off the victory. Then we had our game before Thanksgiving with that 141-108 victory over the Pitbulls. And the Rebels were on top of the Monsters in that week's game. Fury against the Legends, two teams that the Legends we played a couple of times. The Fury will be playing this week with a 134-108 victory. The Fury remained undefeated. Frost on top with a 1-point victory over the Showtime. Then we see the following week, we had the Inferno over the Monsters in a close game. And we had our bye week with the holidays. Then we had, not last week, but 2 weeks ago, our return to action against the Pitbulls. This one on the road. Pitbulls on top in that matchup. We also saw the Wisconsin Frost take down the Monsters, and the Lions again playing a team in our division with a victory over the Inferno. Then there's the matchup for the standings in the division, big game there. Chicago Fury with a 128-96 victory over the Southland Saints. So that is, the two top teams currently in our division, and we'll have that matchup tomorrow against the Fury to see how we stack up against them. We're currently the third ranked team in the division. Then last week we had the 89-82 victory over the Legends. We also saw the Wisconsin Frost with a victory over the Monsters. I do see that. That's a interesting thing. Shows that Windy City Inferno with a victory over the Lacrosse Showtime. No points registered with a forfeit icon there. So that's something I'll probably have to look a little further into. But it looks like that may have been a forfeit there. But I do know there is a team. I don't know necessarily where those teams are located, but in Indiana there is a new team in the ABA that helps with situations just like that. The Shuckers, a team that we've played in the preseason games, and we had the summer league games with the IBL. Um, And that's something, at least for us, if that were to come down to it, that's a team that we could play if we had a situation like that. But this week's matchups, we've got, our game against the Chicago Fury, big matchup there. We also have a matchup with the Saints, taking on the Knights, as the Saints try to hold down that number 2 spot. The Inferno travel to take on the Monsters. And then that is it for this week's games in the Black Division. But a couple of key games there for the top 3 teams here in the rankings as far as the division goes. But you see there, we still got plenty of basketball left. We'll stop sharing that and take a look at our upcoming schedule. So we've got that game tomorrow against the Fury. That's our last game before Christmas and some of the holidays here, and then we'll have one more game before the end of the 2024 calendar year, and that'll be on the road against the Columbus Wizards. A tough matchup. We've faced off against the Wizards already once and seen the Wizards come out on top in that one. Then we'll be back at home for a couple of games. We'll play the Nashville Aces and the Midwest Monsters. Then we'll go on a 3-game road stretch against the Blaze. We'll take on the Fury then on the road. And then we'll go back against the Blaze again. And then we'll come back home for one home game in February against the Ohio Kings. Jump on the road for a 4-game road trip with a couple of games in doubleheader weekends. We'll face off against the Pitbulls, then the Monsters, and then the Kings and the Aces in the same weekend. Then we finish out the season at home against the Maysville Miners. But that is what we've got coming up here for your Hoosier State Instigators big game tomorrow. If you're in the area, highly recommend you make it out to the game. I was there last week. I won't be able to make it up this week, but it's a lot of fun. If you're a fan, you get the chance to have that front row seat. Feel like you're Spike Lee in the Madison Square Garden. This is your opportunity to do that. But it's just $10 for adults, $5 for kids and seniors, and you can also get game packages. So if you get the game packages, we have 3 and 5 game packages as well. And if you get the 5 game, I think that covers pretty much all the rest of the games for the season. I think you'll miss. Yeah, that covers all the games for the rest of the season. So if you buy that 5-game package, that actually is the same as like buying a season ticket at this point, because it covers all the games for the rest of the season. Or if there's just a few games you think you can make it to, you can get that 3-game package as well. Either way, though, it will help cut down the overall cost if you break it. It will cut down the per game cost if you break it down compared to buying each ticket individually at each game. So hope to see you guys there. If not, be sure to tune in on Patreon. If you're a subscriber, a paid tier, or any of the paid tiers, be able to watch that game live with our AI camera. And if not, if you're watching this on YouTube and you catch our stuff um, on there, you'll have that game up at some point next week. So that is what we got going on for tomorrow. This weekend, big matchup, lots of implications, and the ultimate, litmus test for your Hoosier State Instigators as we play the Chicago Fury tomorrow. But that is going to be it for tonight's episode. Thank you, as always, for tuning in and being a loyal supporter, a loyal fan, a loyal sponsor, anybody and everybody that joins in and watches this stream, and everyone who helps support the Hoosier State Instigators. Again, that is a big game tomorrow, 7:30 tip at Best Choice Fieldhouse in Fishers, Indiana. Hope to see you there. If not, catch it with us live on the Patreon. But that is going to do it for tonight's episode. Thanks for joining us. As always, until next time, be great and instigate.